Hey, Champion Nation. My name is Kayshawn Cooper, and I am the host of the Champion Nation podcast. Before we jump into today's episode, can you please do me a favor? It would mean so much to me if you can scroll down and subscribe so you don't miss any of our episodes. Also, if you can hit that little like button, comment below. Your comments mean so much to me and our other viewers and listeners. Also, you can connect with me on LinkedIn, Instagram, and TikTok. Now let's jump into today's episode.
So it's either complaining or criticizing yourself or other people,
Yes.
or like worrying and stressing and things like that.
Yes.
Okay. And then the other interesting thing is that about 95% of our thoughts are unconscious.
Yes.
So we're not even necessarily aware of what we're thinking at any given point throughout the day. And here's the thing, this is the kicker, okay? If you believe that your life has anything to do with the way that you think, well, your future isn't likely going to be a whole lot different than your past unless you start thinking different thoughts.
Hey, Champion Nation. My name is Kayshawn Cooper, and I am the host of the Champion Nation podcast. Welcome back. I am so excited. I know I say that every week. I know. But I am. I literally am excited every time I have one of these conversations. Today, we have Matthew joining us. I don't even know what part of the country or part of the world Matthew is from, but I'm sure he's going to share that with us. We have Matthew. He is a coach, a fitness guru. Maybe I can, take a couple of tips and lessons from him as we begin 2024. Hey, Matthew, welcome to the Champion Nation. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great. I'm just happy to be here, and I appreciate the invite. Thanks so much for having me today.
Absolutely. So what part of the world are you chiming in from?
So I live up in Canada on the West Coast on Vancouver Island. And so I live in a tiny little town called Souk on the southern tip of Vancouver Island, which is actually, we're fairly new to the area. My wife and I moved here with our family during COVID and the middle of the pandemic. And so that's a whole other story in and of itself, but an interesting one to say that.
To say or to even ask if it's cold where you're at would be silly.
Well, you know what? Cold is kind of a relative term in Canada. It's not that bad where we are, but compared to where we came from. And in the prairies where I used to live, it's real cold there right now. So
No way. So Matthew, once again, thank you for joining the Champion Nation. Tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and why you do what you do.
Yeah, you bet. So I'm a certified mentor and mindset coach. And I help people thrive in every aspect of their life. And so I help people improve their health, their wealth, and their happiness by making tiny changes to their habits that produce big results. And why do I do what I do? That's an interesting question. And I'm not sure I have a great answer for that, other than personal development has been a passion of mine for as long as I can remember. Since the time I was a young kid, writing motivational quotes and things like that on my mirror, even before I ever knew about any of this type of stuff.
Wow.
Or the power of things like affirmations or visualizations, and repeating things like that to myself in the mirror before like sporting events, before games, soccer and things like that. And it's just something that I've always been interested in since the time I was a young kid. And one of my favorite quotes, it's by a man named Howard Thurman. And Howard Thurman says, don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive. And then go do that. Because what the world needs is people who have come alive.
Absolutely.
And I just find that, when I get to serve other people, when I get to, help and dive into this personal development stuff, it's very rewarding for my clients, but for myself too. And I just get super inspired. And so it creates this, creates a lot of energy for everybody involved. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I like that. And I want to touch on something you said. You said tiny changes
Yeah.
that produces big outcomes. You was or are you still a certified trainer, personal trainer?
So I don't do personal training right now. I
Okay.
owned and operated a private personal training and a wellness center for a number of years. And it was actually a really, really cool spot. And I helped people lose like hundreds of pounds throughout that process. But I don't do personal training anymore. Now it's all about the mindset work. And they're very, very closely related when you really begin to peel back the layers and understand how that works. So I focus mostly on the personal development now.
That's amazing. Jim Rohn. I know if you're into personal development, you know Jim Rohn. Jim Rohn,
Of
he said,
course.
it's good to have a favorite meal, but the real thing is, what is your favorite book, right? What is your favorite book?
Right.
And that's because of the mindset. So you used to take care of the body, which evolved into becoming a mindset coach. What sparked that pivotal transition?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I got into personal training with a passion for fitness.
Mm,
Like a lot of personal trainers, I enjoyed time in the gym. I enjoyed being physical, and it helped me feel better. It helped me think better, and it helped me perform better. And when I started training people, they'd come to me with questions like, well, how do I lose this weight? Or they'd say things like, well, I got this problem. I need to lose 30 pounds or I need to lose 50 pounds. And what I learned is that actually the weight itself wasn't the problem.
okay.
The weight was oftentimes a symptom to an underlying either mental or emotional issue. And once we began to kind of address that, the weight kind of took care of itself by default. And
Wow.
so while most personal trainers, they focus on like big muscle groups like your quads or your pecs and stuff like that, I realized that the biggest muscle that we needed to train was between our two ears. And so it was back in 2014 where I found, okay, well, I'm going to have to dig a little bit deeper and I'm going to need some, better tools to help address some of this. And so I became a certified life coach back in 2014. My goal was to just have that as another tool that I could use to help people on their weight loss journey. And it worked. And what I
Wow.
realized was that, yeah, so much of what's going on in people's physical body has to do with the way that they think and the way that they feel. And
Absolutely.
when we addressed a little bit more of that root cause, like I said, people's results just skyrocketed. And so that was kind of the reason why I got deeper and deeper into that personal development aspect of it.
Thanks for sharing that, Matthew. Have you did you go through your own set of battles mentally that sort of sparked? When people start a nonprofit, hey, why did you start a nonprofit for homelessness? It's because I experienced homelessness or someone I know experienced homelessness. So, was there a personal experience that triggered this mindset thing?
Yeah, actually, there was a couple that come to mind.
Mm,
And the first was, I've always been pretty active. I've always been pretty physical. I've always played sports and things like that. But in 2008 and 2009, I had an experience that was kind of one of those life changing moments. And, you know, uh, I found myself in a position where I was overweight. I was out of shape. I had just gotten through like a bad breakup with a woman that I've been living with for about 7 years. And
mm,
I was drinking pretty much every day. And to be honest with you, like doing drugs pretty regularly too.
wow.
And at one point, I remember very clearly, I saw a photograph of myself. And when I saw this picture of myself, I didn't even recognize the person looking back at me. And it was kind of like a wake up call or a little bit of a gut punch. I mean, I was kind of ashamed of who I had let myself become, you know?
Wow.
And it was right then and there that I like drew a line in the sand and I decided that I was going to make some changes. And at first, the changes were small and progress was kind of slow, but I started by just exercising. And for me, exercise has always been a catalyst to help me give me the energy and give me the confidence to start taking on some bigger and bigger challenges in my life. And when I started to exercise regularly, it started to kind of snowball, and I, kind of clean my apartment and, started to dress a little bit better. I started to treat myself a little bit better. And the effects of that began to compound. And so that was kind of what got me into that fitness and training mode in the first place. Since then, I mean, life is all about learning.
Yes.
And making mistakes and growing sometimes, isn't it?
It is. And I'm glad you touched on making mistakes, because a lot of times as human beings, there is a constant battle between self-love and self-hate. And when things are going well, when we got the job, when we got the promotion, the family's doing well, the bank account is looking right, we love ourselves. But when we make a mistake, we get fired, we get a divorce, when different things of those natures happen, we tend to beat up on ourselves. We tend to, UFC our ourselves, knock out ourselves. So what strategies did you use when or if you fell off the horse? How did you go from looking at that person and say, I'm ashamed, and not staying there? You decided to, I'm ashamed, and take action. So what steps, tiny steps, did you take?
Yeah. Well, just to your point there about kind of beating yourself up a little bit, I talk a lot in my coaching about things like gratitude, about things like persistence, and things like self-love. And the truth is that, like you said, it's easy to be grateful when everything's going well.
Obviously.
It's easy to persist in something when things are working out the way that you want them to. And it's easy to love yourself when it's like you're happy with what you're doing and where you're at, and you're on a roll. But the truth is that, man, I find that when it really counts, it's like it's most important to be grateful when you don't have everything that you want. To be grateful for the things that you do have and where you are and what you're working on and that sort of thing. Or to persist even though things are difficult or challenging. That's when it really counts, man. Like it's easy to be grateful when things are going well. It's a little bit difficult when it's not. But that's when it really matters. That's when it really counts. And life is full of paradoxes.
It is.
And the thing that I've found is that when you're talking about like self-love and finding compassion for yourself, maybe I find that a lot of times people will think to themselves, well, I'll love myself, or I'll be happier with myself, or I'll have more self-respect once I make this change, or once I achieve this goal weight, or once I achieve this financial milestone. But the truth is that like once you begin to honor yourself and respect yourself, then and only then can you really begin to start to make some of those changes. And that was a lesson that I had to learn the hard way. And you're talking about making mistakes, and you're talking about making changes. One of the things that I really needed to change and learn from was a dependency, primarily with alcohol, but drugs were always a part of that too. And I found that when I owned my own business, I was in a lot of stress. My anxiety was through the roof. I was working
Absolutely.
a lot of hours, and my response to that, my coping mechanism, was to drink more. And I finally got to the point where I had tried to quit, I had tried to cut back, and I just ended up right where I was all the time. over drinking, blacking out, and things like that. And I finally got to the point where I realized that I had to make some changes and I couldn't do it on my own. And so I reached out at the beginning of COVID and joined a 12-step program.
Yes.
And they really were a huge, huge support and helped me overcome that, learn from that, and begin to heal some of my wounds from the past and
Yes.
some of the mistakes that I had made, and begin to learn to love and respect and honor myself first, and then
Right.
start to be able to, move forward with that for my family, for my community, for my clients, and so on.
Let me ask you a question. When it comes down to making those steps to move forward, how big of a role did awareness play? And the reason I asked that, because I have a dear friend of mine. He was an alcoholic. I think he said something ridiculous when he was in this phase in his life. He had about 3 or 4 DUIs. I mean, it was, his life was really, really, really on a downward spiral. And he said awareness that he was an alcoholic was the beginning of his journey. So, how big of a role did awareness play for you?
Yeah, I think that it always begins with an awareness.
Mm,
And that's because, like, how the heck are you going to change something that you're not aware of? And I think that oftentimes, people will only change for a couple of reasons. But I think that so oftentimes it comes in the form of like a strong emotional impact. It's like
hmm
getting kicked around a little bit, and like everybody's rock bottom is a little bit different. But I got to the point where I realized that, man, it's harder for me to stay the same and to continue in this than it is for me to make some changes to my life. And I think that so oftentimes we need that difficult moment. We need that rock bottom in order to really realize or become aware that something's got to give here. You know what I mean? And so
mm.
I think that awareness is everything. I think it starts with that awareness and uh, acceptance, maybe even too.
Yeah, and that leads me to my next question I have for you. You have a trifecta approach when it comes down to transformation. You have physical fitness, you have mental resilience, and emotional well being by that self acceptance and awareness. Can you just touch on a little bit on why you choose to use that holistic approach and how crucial it is for true transformation?
Yeah, absolutely. I think sometimes people make the mistake of thinking like, well, I'll be happy when I lose this weight, or I'll be happy when I achieve like whatever it is, 6-pack abs or whatever it might be. But I'll tell you, man, I know from experience that just being in shape or just having like the body and the fitness, unless you're doing the work here and here, it doesn't help you feel any better. It
Wow.
might for a little while, but like, it doesn't really significantly improve your level of happiness in the same way that money won't do it either. And I find that that's the first thing is that, the 6-pack abs isn't going to make you happy. You really have to do, excuse me, a little bit more of the deep work. The other thing that comes to mind is that there's a phrase in personal development that says that you become what you think about. You become what
Yes.
you think about. And that just, to me, reminds me that our thoughts are important, and the truth is that the average person has about 60,000 thoughts per day. Okay.
Yes.
Which sounds like a lot until you learn that about 95% of them are the same thoughts that you had yesterday and the day before that and the day before that and the day before that.
Like, what am I going to eat today?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, yep,
100%. What are you going to eat? What are you going to wear? You drive
yep.
to work, you see the same people. And, of those 60,000 thoughts, about 80% of them, statistically speaking, are negative.
Yeah. Wow.
Okay. Right. And maybe it varies a little bit from person to person, but on average, about 80% of our thoughts throughout the day are negative. So it's either complaining or criticizing yourself or other people. or like
Yes.
worrying and stressing and things like that.
Yes.
Okay. And then the other interesting thing is that about 95% of our thoughts are unconscious.
Yes.
So
Hmm.
we're not even necessarily aware of what we're thinking at any given point throughout the day. And here's the thing, this is the kicker. Okay. If you believe that your life has anything to do with the way that you think, well, your future isn't likely going to be a whole lot different than your past unless you start thinking different thoughts.
Absolutely.
And so, fitness for me, it was kind of like, it was just the packaging. It was just the medium to deliver personal development. And so even when I was training, even when I owned and operated that private personal training center, it was just an opportunity to have some of those conversations, inspire people's minds, and start to get a fire burning inside of them so that they could start to
Absolutely.
kind of make some of those changes, think a little bit different, feel a little bit different. Because when I think better and I feel better, I do better. You know what I mean?
Very true. Very true. What are some of the actionable steps that an individual can take to, I guess, train or think new thoughts? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's the question. What are some of the actionable steps that you would recommend for an individual to think new thoughts, or thoughts that's going to lead them in the life and the direction that they want to live, in the direction they want to go in?
Yeah. Well, a lot of times people make the mistake of thinking that education ends once they leave school,
Got it.
and they're looking forward to graduation and that sort of thing. But man, that's when the work just begins, isn't it?
Correct.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And we're actually really blessed right now because we live in a time and a space where we have more opportunity to access information than ever before throughout
I
history with
agree.
the invention of the internet.
I agree.
Um, and so I'm a huge advocate of, reading. I love that you brought up Jim Rohn. Jim Rohn and Zig Ziglar and Les Brown and Tony Robbins and Earl Nightingale have been mentors of mine. They've got tons of content and information. You can look them up on YouTube, or you can read their books and things like that. But those will start to change the way that you think a little bit. Okay. But I think that sometimes too, there's this idea that, people will read a book, or they'll hear a podcast, or they'll listen to something, and they'll think, oh yeah, I know that, or yeah, I heard it once. And they'll think that they get it. But really, man, there's power in repetition.
It is.
And it's all about immersion for me. And what I mean by that is it's about like hearing the same thoughts, reading it, hearing it, writing it, listening to it over and over and over and over again, because they say that repetition is the mother of all learning. And that's how
Yes.
we learn to do anything, from speak our native language to reading to writing to tying our shoes to walking. And for me, it's about reading and rereading great books, or hearing and rehearing great ideas. And you can do that with books and audio and podcasts and stuff. But I think that one of the best things that you can do, and here's just a little tip for your listeners, is to find a community or immerse yourself in a culture of people. And because
Yes.
that environment is so important. And they
Yes.
say that you're the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. And that's true, because we all unconsciously begin to take on the qualities and the characteristics of the people that we hang out with. So even just spending
100%.
time with people who are either a little further ahead, who have a little bit of knowledge that you're seeking, or doing better than you, can start to rub off.
I agree with you 100%. I was going to ask you about environment, but you touched on it, about the average. We are the sum total of the 5 people that we hang around with. What about hanging around people that have self limiting beliefs?
Mm,
You're doing everything that you're doing, or everything that you know to do, but you're hanging around. Sometimes it's family members, sometimes it's
right.
close friends you've been around, high school and college buddies. they just have this negative, just tone, this negative aura about themselves. What strategies do you use to break free from some of those self-limiting beliefs?
Yeah, well, that environment is everything. And like Jim Rohn said, that you got to stand guard at the gate of your mind, because
Yes, absolutely.
you can't allow people to dump that negativity into here unquestioningly. And so the truth is that, like, the power of suggestion is one of the most powerful forces known to man. And that's just kind of like being care. That's why he says that, you got to stand guard at the gate of your mind. And so consciously assessing the things that people are saying, the things that people are suggesting when you're spending time with them is so important, but it can be incredibly draining. And I don't know if you've got any of those people in your life that are a little bit negative or things like that, but man, you ever walk away from those kinds of conversations or encounters and you just, oh man, that just took so much energy to be, they're just energy vampires, you know what I mean?
Or when you see their number come across your phone, you're like, oh God, man,
Right.
I don't.
and,
Here we
and
go
on,
again.
right. But on the other hand, there's other people you get around them and it's just so uplifting, and you walk away from them
Yes.
and you feel, inspired and motivated and energized. And so I think that that's really important. And there's an exercise that I do with clients where I have them rate their friends.
Oh wow.
And the reason this is powerful is because, oftentimes we just kind of get into the habit of hanging out with people because, well, we've been friends forever, been hung out since high school or whatever it might be. Or like you said, maybe they're a family member or something like that. But that can be a little bit of a trap that keeps
Yes.
us stuck in our pattern of thinking and our pattern of behavior. And the exercise is just to write down the names of the people that you would visit in a week or in a month or whatever. And just beside their name, asking yourself one question. Okay, not are they funny, or are they a good person, or do I like them even, but just, does this person contribute to me achieving my goals?
Mm,
Is this
very
person
simple
helping
question.
me move forward in my life, or is this person keeping me back and keeping me down and preventing that growth? And just giving a little, like, either a positive symbol or a negative symbol. And sometimes when you write it down and you see it on paper in black and white, you begin to see things a little bit more clearly. And I'm not suggesting that you need to cut these people out of your life per se, but maybe you do. Okay, maybe there are some people that are just a straight up bad influence, but maybe even just changing that model of that relationship a little bit and seeking to spend a little bit less time with some of those negative influences and putting yourself in situations where you can spend more time with some of those positive inspirational people who are pulling the best out of you and forcing you to level up a little bit.
Yeah, and I know you were being generous when you said, you're not telling people to cut people off, but the farmer, his job is to nurture. His or her job is to nurture. When they see weeds growing up, he doesn't talk nice. He or she doesn't talk nice to the weeds and say, "Please leave my crops alone. Please don't do it. I'm going to distance myself from you." What does the farmer do, Matthew?
Rips them
There
out.
you go.
Get out of here.
Get out of here. Get out of
Yeah.
here. If you have people that can possibly choke your future, like weeds can choke the crop, I think it is best to go ahead and just cut them on out.
Right. Well,
I,
you're
I, I don't. I
absolutely
don't.
right.
I don't see that as being selfish. I see that as being self-reliant, maybe self-love, maybe. What do you think?
Right. The other interesting thing about that is, like, here's the thing is, for me, my mental and my emotional state is like priority number one.
Yes.
And sometimes people think that that's selfish, but the truth is that, like, like I said, when I think better and I feel better, I do better. And if I'm showing up as the best version of me, I'm having a bigger influence. I'm being a better, role model for my family. I'm able to be the best possible version for me. And it's like a pebble in a pond. You begin to have this ripple effect where now it's
Absolutely.
benefiting not just yourself, but it's everybody around you. And so I don't think that that's selfish at all. I think that, it's pretty hard to pour from an empty cup. And I've allowed myself to get to that point where, I was scraping bottom and I didn't have a lot to give. And I'm no good to anybody when I'm in that state. So, whether it's your energy, whether it's, your attitude, whether it's your environment, all of those things are high level priorities for me.
Absolutely. With that being said, I know you already you shared a tip or exercise that you do with your clients as far as rate your friends, and I love that. Actually, I'm going to do the same thing when we end this recording. But what are some of the other key strategies or tools, if you don't mind sharing, that you use to personalize your coaching sessions, your workshops, and online programs to help individuals cultivate a positive mindset? And I use the word cultivate
Yeah.
intentionally.
Yeah. I love that. Well, just something real simple, okay, on the surface is I talk a lot about the importance of goals.
Okay.
And the reason is because, a mentor of mine by the name of Earl Nightingale, he
Hmm.
says that a person without a goal is like a ship without a rudder.
Without a rudder.
Yeah. And,
Yes.
if you can imagine a ship without a rudder, you're just floating around at sea. You got no aim, no direction, no purpose, no destination. And a ship without a rudder is eventually going to do one of two things, man. It's either one, going to get lost, or it's going to end up on the rocks somewhere. And neither one are positive. And
Correct.
so a goal, even just setting something as simple as a goal, gives you some direction. It gives you a sense of purpose, and it allows you to start to make progress towards something. And it almost doesn't even matter what it is. But I find that, man, like Tony Robbins says that progress equals happiness.
Mm.
And when you're moving forward and you're making progress in life, you're going to be filled with feelings of like accomplishment, pride, satisfaction, joy. It's like a high vibration energy. And
Absolutely.
when you're moving towards a goal like that, that's how you start to build momentum. And so one of the very first things that I'll do is have people set a goal. And like I said, it almost doesn't even really matter what type of goal, but only about 2% of people have goals. Statistically speaking, only about 2% of people have goals. Most people have wants, Kashan.
Wow. Wow.
And what I mean is, like, most people, like, what do they want? Well, I mean, they usually want to lose a little bit of weight or get in a bit better shape. They want to earn more money. Okay. They want to have a little bit more like financial freedom, maybe even in
Yeah.
some freedom of time and place and things like that. Or they just want to be happier. Okay. That's one I hear oftentimes. I just want to be happier. But the truth is that those aren't goals. Those are just wants. And
Yeah.
everybody wants those things.
Yeah. Absolutely. Hands down.
So yeah. And so, a goal is something completely different. A goal is something that's specific, that's tangible. It's something that you can aim at and a target that you can hit. And, like vague goals produce vague results.
Absolutely.
And my mentor
Absolutely.
always said, if you aim at nothing, you'll hit it with amazing accuracy every time,
100%.
you know?
100% accuracy. Let me ask you a question. Why is it that the 97% don't write goals or don't have goals?
Well, it probably comes back to that awareness,
Mm.
not understanding the importance of your thoughts, not understanding. Earl Nightingale talks about how most people play the most popular game in the world, which is follow the follower.
Yes.
And they're just taking cues from everybody else around them. and not stopping to ask themselves, like, are these the right people to be emulating or to be modeling? And so a lot of times people aren't taught this kind of thing. Truly, to be honest with you, I feel like this stuff should be taught in school. And I
Yeah,
wonder
it
how
should be.
much different our lives would be if it was.
Yeah, I agree with you. I definitely agree with you. Um, you bring up Earl Nightingale and Jim Rohn several times. Uh, do you mind sharing a program that you have either read or went through Earl Nightingale and Jim Rohn?
So to be honest with you, most of the information that I have about Earl Nightingale and Jim Rohn have come from YouTube.
Okay.
Okay. That being said, though, like I mentioned, I'm a huge advocate of reading. And I was turned on to a book called Think and Grow Rich a number of years ago. And Think and Grow Rich, for your listeners who aren't aware, was originally written in 1937 by Napoleon Hill, and has since gone on to sell over 200 million copies in like
Wow.
126 different languages. And
Wow.
it's widely regarded as one of the best personal development tools, or like one of the best personal development books of all time. But the best thing that I would suggest, and the biggest benefit that I've ever experienced, has always come from the help and the support of like a coach or a mentor.
Okay.
And so I've taken different coaching programs and mentorships, and personally, I've spent like over $100,000 in the last 6 or 7 years just on personal development coaches and different programs and things like that in the past. And I know that that's had the biggest influence on me and helped me get to where I am today, hands down. So
I appreciate you sharing that. Thank you. I just I wanted to know you have inserted Earl Nightingale so many times. I wanted to know if there was one specific program, but just go to YouTube, go to the search bar, and type Earl Nightingale and Jim Rohn and Napoleon Hill name, and basically that's what you're saying.
yeah, I mean, there's tons of free content online these days and things like that. That's just gold, to be honest with you.
Speaking of gold, do you have a success story in mind, or something that you uh, or transformations that you've witnessed from your clients, particularly in the area of relationships or career performance and financial goals, that you don't mind sharing?
Yeah, for sure. Well, there's a lot, to be honest with you. And going back into, even my gym days, like I said, I've helped people lose as much as like 100. I had one client who lost 120 pounds. And, I mean, that kind of transformation isn't just a physical one. Like I said, that's a mental and emotional, that's a life transformation.
Wow.
But yeah, I mean, I've had clients, there's one that comes to mind that, there's a woman that I was working with, actually still working with, and she had a goal or an idea to start her own business. And she had been thinking about it for, get this, 13 years, but had never
Insane.
taken action on it. And it had
Insane.
always been in the back of her head, and it had always been on her heart as something that she wanted to do. And we sat down with pen and paper, and we began to just kind of sketch out, like, hypothetically speaking, what would that look like? Okay. And how would you go about that? I'm not asking you to take action on it just yet, but how would you do that if you would do that? And so we began to break down the steps. And once she began to see that on paper, it's something really funny happens. And I always say that I think there's a little bit of magic in these pens.
I agree. I
Yeah.
agree.
And the reason I say that is because what you write down has a tendency to become your reality, And once she saw it on paper in black and white, she was able to start to see some of the pieces and starts to kind of create a little bit of confidence too. And so she began to take action on her goal. She created a business, and now she's she's got like, I think 10 or 12 employees that are working for her.
Oh
She's
man.
got another spin-off business that's become as a direct result of the first one. And she's like improved her finances. She's taken action on her dreams. And we talked about the inspiring nature of that. And I mean, that's just one that comes to mind. But that kind of stuff happens all the time.
That is amazing. And Matthew, good job for taking the leap and helping other individuals first by helping yourself. So for individuals who are interested in pursuing a career in mindset coaching, what advice would you offer them based on your experience and success?
Yeah. um, I think first and foremost, I think that there has to be some level of self-leadership.
Mm.
And what I mean by that is, like, coaching is a pretty common thing, and you see different coaches popping up online, and it's all the time. And sometimes, people aren't necessarily even in a position where they're showing up as the best version of themselves for themselves, but want to be coaches for other people. And I think that leadership begins with yourself. And if you can't
Correct.
lead yourself, how the heck can you expect to lead other people?
Yes.
And so I think kind of going back to my time in AA and that sort of thing, that, keeping your side of the street clean, and cleaning up your yard a little bit is the first step. But Tony Robbins says that success leaves clues.
It does.
And to me, that just reminds me that if there's somebody who has something that I want, or is doing something that I want to do, to like reach out to them and to ask them, like, what are they reading? What are they watching? What are they listening to? What steps did they take to help them get there? And again, that just comes back to the importance of mentorship or your environment. And if you're taking similar actions, you're likely to get similar results. So I think finding a mentor, finding somebody who's already succeeding in that arena, and then learning from them is one of the biggest hacks, or the biggest shortcuts to success. Don't try to figure it out all on your own. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. There's too much information. It is too
Right.
much help out here to
Right.
try to figure everything out on your own. There's a saying, if you want to go faster, go alone. But it doesn't mean you will go further.
Right.
Not at all. You've had experience with AA. You've made tiny changes that produce big habits, big outcomes, not in just your life, but also in the lives of others that you've come in contact. You created this exercise by this person adding to you or this person taking away from you. What does it mean in your own opinion, Matthew? We've had a great conversation so far, but I would love to know, and the listeners and viewers would love to know, what does it mean to you, in your own opinion, to be a champion?
Hmm. I think that to be a champion requires you to do the hard work, to do the deep work, and to face some of the maybe mistakes that you've made, some of the shortcomings that you have, and to show up for yourself and those around you every single day, working on trying to become the best version of you. And I think the life is all about growth. It's about evolution. It's about reinvention, and it's about learning. And I think that, it's easy to lose yourself in Netflix. It's easy to want
Oh
to
yeah.
drink your problems away. It's easier to just kind of plop down on the couch at the end of a long day and think that, your work is done, so to speak. But I think that, life is all about service to others and showing up to become the best possible version of you so that you can serve others to the fullest extent around you. And I think that if you're willing even to try something like that or attempt something like that, if you're doing the work and you're putting in the reps, you're a champion in my eyes.
Thank you so much, Matthew. I like that answer. I do. Very good. Very good. Very good. Where could our listeners and viewers connect with you?
So I'm most active on Instagram. My handle is at matt.jodouin. My last name is spelled Jodouin. Less active on Facebook, but I regularly host free workshops and free webinars that are open to the public. I've got one coming up at the end of the month. It's called The Missing Link to Lasting Weight Loss. And it's all about making those little shifts mentally and physically that are going to produce lasting outcomes. Because a lot of people, you're probably aware, they might lose a little bit of weight, but then usually they all put it all back on again, don't they?
Yep.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
And, so I regularly host free workshops and things like that. I also have a free online community for men who are interested in fitness, mindset, personal development, and leadership. And I host a whole bunch of free content and free resources. And it's a great group of guys that we kind of hold each other accountable, inspire each other, and share insights and awarenesses with one another, and learn from each other. So if anybody's interested in joining, any of your listeners, feel free to reach out, and I can send you a link.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Hey, send that link anyway, Matthew.
Beautiful. Yeah, absolutely. I will.
Wonderful. Absolutely. Hey, Champion Nation, this has been an inspiring conversation between myself and Matthew. And, with everything that Matthew said, I can sum it up into a few words. It's all about learning. Life is about learning. Just because you've graduated high school and graduated college, the university, it doesn't mean that learning and evolution stops. If you're not learning, if you're not growing, you know what the other side is. You're decaying, you're dying. That's not you, Champion Nation. That's not you at all. It's easy to be average. It's easy to sit down and watch an entire series on Netflix. How do I know? I've done it before. I've done it, so I know how easy it can be. They always say, hey, what is the secret to success? The secret to success is one word, and one word only: choice. What choices are you going to make after you listen to this conversation between myself and Matthew? Hey, Champion Nation, please don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and comment. Don't forget to hit that notification bell too. Have a champion day.